Welcome to Together, a higher ed podcast where we bring you stories, insights, and experiences from voices across higher education. I'm Chase Haygood, Vice Provost for Student Success at the University of Utah. Today, we're joined by a good friend, Janell Cerva, the Chief Impact and Strategy Officer for Utah Community Action. Janell leads initiatives that address poverty through strategic partnerships, affordable housing development, and early childhood programs. Welcome, Janell.
Thank you, Chase. It's good to be here.
So point of this podcast is to talk with innovators and understand from multiple perspectives, the notion of not just pathways for success, but the work in and of itself. What does it take for, really complex systems and sticky, sociological challenges? What does it take to not fully solve them? I don't know that any of them are fully solvable, but address them, begin to tackle them, right? So I'm wondering, to get us started, if you could tell us a little bit about your role at the Utah Community Action and initiatives that you're currently working on.
Yes, but first of all, I wanted to say I think they are solvable.
All right.
I think if you get people like innovators together, like big thinking, I think we can solve them, right? That's why it's exciting. But so Utah Community Action is the Chief Impact and Strategy Officer. I lead our data team, our data and policy team, our development and communications teams, and then the most exciting part of my job, I enjoy all of it, but is I get to do strategic partnerships on behalf of the agency. So we're a community action agency, which means that we're designed to meet the needs of the community. And so every 3 years, we do a deep dive into assessing what those are. We survey, we have a lot of focus groups. We look at how are those needs shifting every 3 years, and then we try to shift our programs accordingly. So that shapes what we're immediately offering, and then how we look at our long-term strategy. And then based on where those long-term strategies lead, then it's where do we need to create more partnerships? How do we need to figure out how we start to get ahead of some of these issues instead of just being so reactive. So the core programs that we offer are all designed to support individuals, children, families experiencing poverty. So currently those are our Head Start program, which is a no-cost, high-quality preschool program with wraparound supports, including for the parents. We do a home weatherization program. We do housing case management, including diversion from the homeless shelter and landlord-tenant mediation across the state. Then we also do, we have a nutrition program, a workforce development program, and what's our sixth? I'm missing our sixth. Oh, heat utility assistance. And that's actually important because it's a light touch program, but it's our broadest reach. So Through that program, we serve about 25,000 individuals a year and we serve about 50,000 individuals total over the course of a year.
Well, I should have said this already at the top, but I'm going to go ahead and say it now. And that is, thank you for the work that you're doing and the work that you're leading and the lives that you're touching. I mean, the impact and reach of Utah Community Action is just incredible. Can you talk a little bit about kind of scope, like in terms of geography? Where all is Utah Community Action engaged? You mentioned about 25,000 lives touched by that sixth area. You talk a little bit about Salt Lake Valley, et cetera?
Yeah. So all of our programs, all 6 of those programs are offered throughout Salt Lake County and Tooele County out to Nevada and Wendover. And then we also have some of our programs in Morgan, Davis, and Weber counties. And then like landlord-tenant mediation, I mentioned that. We do that statewide. And then we're part of a large state network and national network. So I think the reach of our programs and our maybe thinking and innovation is much broader than that.
Awesome. So again, part of this podcast is trying to think through not just those big picture and solvable. I like that. I love it. They are solvable. Our ability to think about lasting change and lasting innovation. Could you talk a little bit about projects you're really excited about or things that you all are doing now that are creating the kind of lasting impact for the community in which we all live?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the programs our core programs that I mentioned, those continue to have positive impact, right? We're supporting some individuals in crisis situations, like landlord-tenant mediation. That's a really important program because we'll come in, we have really strong relationships with landlords, with their attorney, their legal offices, and then we're trusted broker and advocate for individuals experiencing poverty. So we have attorneys who will come to us. They're like emotional about this program because they're saying they will have our clients go to them for advice, which they can't give. They're not representing them. And so in the past, they've had nowhere else they can go. So now they know that they can come to Utah Community Action, and we're a trusted broker, knowing that landlords need to be made whole and these individuals need support in moments of crisis, whether it's because of domestic violence or because they had a health crisis and they either have to pay a medical bill or rent or things like that. So we can step in and provide that legal expertise. I mean, something like that is huge because an eviction on someone's record, I mean, that changes the course of their life.
Yeah.
So I think we have programs like that are highly effective. We divert the full capacity of the shelter system every year through our homeless diversion program. So much is focused on, the crisis moment in the homeless system, and we're saying there's all this stuff we can do to prevent it, and that's work we're actively doing that's often unseen because you don't see the problem till it's there. So those are things that we're doing that I think are amazing, that I am excited about, and we have systems of people that are working towards those every day. But where I get the most excited is what more can we do? How do we solve these? How do we start to get out front of issues? And for me right now, the two biggest issues are around affordable housing development and expanding access to high quality early childhood services.
I love it. I want to come back around to early childhood in just a second. Can you say a little bit or share a little bit, if you're willing, about how you got into this work? What drew you to the work? Tell us a little bit about your journey into the work with Utah Community Action. I know you know the University of Utah well, so feel free to weave in or out any of those elements of the story, if you're willing.
Absolutely. So I moved here. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I moved here 10 years ago from Chicago, and I'd started my PhD program in the Education Leadership and Policy program here at the University of Utah. And I was also just looking to engage in the community. My heart's always been driven, even looking at PhD programs, and I knew I'm a policy person by background. I have a master's in public administration with a policy process focus. So I really wanted to say, how do I start to get involved on a human level and grow my network? And one way I decided to start doing that was by volunteering at the homeless shelter downtown at the Road Home. It was downtown at the time. Now they have a scattered site model. So I would go just once a week and spend time in the preschool program, once a week with these little kids. And, I loved it. I love toddlers, and, they're just loving and they're fun and they're sweet, and they don't know any different that they're in a homeless shelter. But you would start to see behaviors that were really clearly the result of trauma and that were really troubling. So first of all, is not a good place for kids to be in a homeless shelter. It's the hub of drug trafficking, sex trafficking. There's a lot of cartels that prey on individuals in poverty. And then you would see kids who would, they were just so loving, they would need love and attention, and then they would turn around and get angry and, hit you or say, 4-letter words that I won't say on here, or, just, they would say, my daddy's in jail for hitting my mom. I mean, they're in the middle of really difficult circumstances. And for me, I was just like, we can do better. We can do better. This is not okay. Me coming in once a week for a couple hours is not helping. What do we do? So I started reaching out to anyone that would talk to me in that space. And at the time, my original research was looking at homeless children in the education system. So I started just reaching out to executive directors of nonprofits, government officials, anyone who would talk to me, which that's an interesting exercise, by the way, to say who will talk to you.
Sure, yeah.
So as a result of that work, I got increasingly involved in the homeless service system. I worked closely I did special projects for Mayor Ben McAdams, and working on collective impact on homelessness. And so increasingly became more and more involved in that work. And that's how I first got introduced to Utah Community Action, because they were just starting their diversion program that I mentioned earlier around that time. We were seeking additional sources of funding for more innovative ways to address the homeless challenges. And diversion was specifically created to keep children and families out of the homeless shelter. Let's identify other solutions. Once kids hit the homeless shelter, their education outcomes, life outcomes, economic outcomes, the health outcomes drop significantly. There's a huge difference. So anything we can do to keep kids out of the shelter is what we want to do. So I became very familiar with the program and the people there at that time. and just really respected what they were doing. They were willing to look at things and find new solutions and figure out, what does the community need from us and how do we do it. Then Mayor McAdams ran for Congress, so those of us who were working with him all found different roles. And I went to work for United Way of Salt Lake, specifically focusing on early childhood. So then I got to work with Utah Community Action on the Head Start early childhood services and early childhood system side. And through that process over time, our CEO and I were just like, we need to find a way to work together. And we're just exploring things over time. And this kind of just, when the timing came together in the position, it's just been a perfect fit. So, but my heart, again, has always been in how do we support children and families who are not well served by whether it's socioeconomic status, race, like there's, again, that we can do better as a system.
Yep.
I love the quote that like systems aren't malperforming. They're doing exactly what we've designed them to do.
Yep.
So how do we need to change systems? How do we need to redesign them to better serve these children and these families that need additional supports?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Because I think, especially on this podcast and other part of my professional life, it's hearing the stories. And I love your point about asking people like who's willing to listen, who's willing to engage, who's willing to kind of lean into the conversation and help you, right? Or even if it's giving you advice to like, yeah, I tried that and it didn't work, but if you try it again, don't do it this way, do it that way. Because I think you can learn a lot. I really appreciate the who's willing to listen and who's not. So in that experience, which is vast and reaching and has had incredible impact on the community around you, could you share a little bit about how any of us, all of us, can foster the kind of deeper connections from community into an organization like a university or a college when we think about students that are on the path, or we hope that they could be on the path if they choose to get into higher education for all the various, like, in terms of social mobility, skill, purpose, who you are, identity, all of that happens, not magically, but through really good design and really good curriculum and programming and the like, when you get into a college or a university. Can you talk again a little bit about how do we create those kind of connections so that students in Head Start, which in my view is a kind of sister of sorts to programs like TRIO, which I care deeply about. I love Head Start as well, as you know. How is it that we see a kiddo in Head Start and we're able to signal to them, communicate to them that this is, the University of Utah is the place for them. This is their university. How do we do it?
That's a great question. I think, one thing, and this relates back to my research here at the University of Utah, is, like I said, originally I was looking at homeless services, and what I ended up doing my dissertation research around was collaboration, really, and looking at various systems and frameworks for collaboration, specifically looking at targeting, aimed at social impact, right? How do we make a difference? And I specifically looked at around early childhood services, but I think a lot of the principles apply across. And I think one thing we can't do, or one thing we don't want to do, is think we have to genuinely engage with each other, right? So it's a matter of these kids seeing themselves here at the University of Utah, but it's also a matter of like us seeing these kids at the University of Utah, right? Seeing the kids and the people we work with, and not, I think it's so easy to just stay where we're comfortable, talk to people we're comfortable with, speak, there's, people who just are naturally in our spheres or in our neighborhoods or whatever. And I think a huge takeaway from my research and from the work that I see every day is you have to engage with people as humans, right? Not just as, you have to get to know what someone's experiences and to see them as an individual and to know, what are your hopes and dreams? Like, if you go into our classrooms, you're just going to talk to these kids as kids. You're going to notice a lot more of them have dual languages, which is a huge asset, right? They come with this huge benefit that they already bring to the community. A lot more of them maybe are refugees or students of color, but they're just happy and vibrant, and they're to learn, and they're so excited to see you. They're not thinking about themselves as different or you as different. They just want to show you their toys that they made, or they just want to engage with you. They don't have those preconceptions or those limitations on themselves, right? That's what we place on them. That's what gets placed on them as they go through. So I think, as adults looking, how do we change is like, at what point do we start seeing people as different or as not fitting, right? Or is it just because at Head Start we create beautiful environments? And is it like, oh, but then if you see them in an environment that is depressed economically, then is that what shifts our mindset? But I think, you've just got to see these as kids with like endless dreams and hopes and opportunities, the same as you want your kids to have. And then really, I think, you have to interrogate personally, where do my perceptions shift, where I think, oh, this is someone that, let's just get them an entry-level job, or if they graduate high school, it's going to be a miracle, or let's stick them in a trade. They're on a trade. And again, nothing against trades, but like, I want my kids to go to a four-year college. My kids are both in four-year colleges right now. And I'm not saying, oh, that's going to be hard. I don't know if that's a place where you're fit. I'm saying, of course you're going to do this. And then you're going to do whatever else you want to do. So I think we've got to stop, looking at individuals in poverty or children, kids of color as some people who don't naturally belong here. This isn't like a natural part of their trajectory. So I think that's a kind of philosophical answer, but I do think it starts with our own perceptions and engaging with people and children just as humans, as college-bound students.
Right. And well, I really appreciate that, because I mean, within that, as I'm listening to you, Janell, it's like the way in which we as a society, right, and the way that you put it is really fascinating. Like, at what point do we make that switch, right? And that own introspection and interrogation of ourselves and of our own biases and the way that we interact with other people in the world, right? Where we would turn off the idea of possibility for certain kiddos and not for others.
Right.
I was out, as you know, recently. You all hosted me and Lisa and Melka, and we're walking around looking into a couple of Head Start classrooms. And as you know, I have a almost 4-year-old. The other day, somebody asked him, "How old are you?" And he was like, 30. I was like, no. And he was like, 4. It's like, not yet, but he's soon to be 4. I mean, these are his peers.
Yeah.
These are, kids that are right in a critical developmental moment where how they're beginning to see themselves is, in fact, to borrow the way that you're describing it, like, it is interactive with other humans, right? Teachers, peers, the parents of peers. I mean, I see that regularly with my 4-year-old, who I'm chatting with his little peers when I drop him off in preschool every morning. And they're all like, they don't know me besides Marshall's dad. It's like, "Hey, Marshall's dad." And I'm calling them all by name. For me, and as I hear you describe it, it's like, don't all kids deserve, like, not as privilege, but as just a right, a path laid out in front of them that if they choose and they're like, "I'm going to go to college." And I love the way that you put it about your own kids. There are a lot of folks today that seem to be making the kind of argument, kind of writ large, that, oh, well, college might not be for everyone. And this is not my point, somebody else's point, but I want to reiterate it. And it is, they rarely say that about their own kids. Rarely. Any politician, any, social commentator would rarely say that about their own children. The expectation for their own children is that you will go through and you're likely going to get an advanced degree, if not terminal degree. And, you're going to take on the firm, you're going to go to med school, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But they use that kind of limitation to apply to others. And it's often spun in a really positive kind of way. Like, oh, well, no, not everyone. It's like, what about a societal level expectation that education is freeing and education creates a thriving democratic kind of space? Like, I hear that in your description of that should be our expectation.
Well, and you and I have a similar view, I think, on the value of a liberal arts and a general education, right, to expand your critical thinking. And that's really where leadership skills develop. So for tracking certain people to trades, we're also saying, that's not a leadership track, right? And it doesn't mean that it's, again, not valuable, that you can't have, a good quality of life with benefited positions and all of that. Those are all very important. But it's also saying, are we going to keep, universities white and upper middle class, right? And then that's where we know like our leadership class essentially comes from the most part. Like, we got to be a little bit more disruptive than that.
Yeah, we do live in a pluralistic society. Awesome. I think we have time for the last question, which links up really well to what we were just talking about. And that is, how do we create the kind of lasting transformative change? And from the title of this podcast, how do we do it together? So any insights, any of the things that we should do or shouldn't do, or things that you've seen that work well, but lasting change, not the flash in the pan. Oh, don't we feel great? We set up this program. We, revised that curriculum. But how do we create and do it together?
Well, I think it comes back to what I started with, is believing that we can make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can do it. We can address these problems. No one can do it alone, though. That's why I love the idea of together and of collaboration. That's my research.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love meeting you. It's like we can talk about a million things because we're like, we could do this, we could do this, there's all these great ideas that we can do, and that are feasible. Like I take the approach of like the resources are there. If we give people the right ideas, ideas that are exciting and that are getting at root cause issues, and I think people are good. I think people want to make a difference. It's just showing them how could we do that, and how can we do that together. So I think that's exciting. I think it's inspiring. Like we can make a difference in this world, and I think one way that we have to do it is to not limit our circles, or again, who do we feel like we want to do this work with, right? Like we have to do it not just for other people. We have to do this work with people. And I think that's so important. There's one thing that's just interesting that I found fascinating in my research is, I looked at community members and I looked at sort of mediator people in sort of this middle space, and I looked at system level leadership. So a lot of elected officials, CEOs, high level philanthropists. And one thing you see in community members is this like overwhelming faith that I don't know what they're doing up there, but I think they're doing good stuff. Like they're working hard. There's really just this positivity towards them that you don't really see in the system leaders towards community members. There was not that level of positivity or like trust, just that like they're doing their best, they're working hard. There was not that same generosity extended to community members as there was from community members to their leaders, which is fascinating. I would think that would be the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, we're limiting ourselves. We're limiting what other people can do by our own negative perceptions of others. And how do we disrupt that? And I know that, again, that's philosophical, but I do think it starts there, of us talking to peers and saying, no, that's not accurate. Like we can, like people are working hard. People care about their children. People are, doing all these things. How do we just, there's small things we can do. How can we disrupt some of the, perpetual inequities that we see?
Yeah. Janell, thank you for being willing to sit down and chat with us today. Again, Utah Community Action. If you don't know Utah Community Action, you can look them up. You should. We have a really great relationship with Utah Community Action here at the University of Utah, and we're grateful for the work they do in the community that we're a part of, that surrounds us, and that we're also active members in. So again, folks, this was Together, a higher ed podcast. We ask you to join us again next time.